I'm really delighted to be here to talk about the Metaverse. Just a quick poll, how many of you have a sense of what the Metaverse is? Okay, great. Well, I'm delighted to be here today with Joudrey, CEO of Jespionage. He worked with Electronic Arts and now is producing the VR chat social software. Ben Miller, who's the Senior Project Manager and Lead Interactive Developer at Avacon Labs, and has lots of experience doing interactive design and development. And Mary Spio, who is the founder and president of Next Galaxy, and the founder of Seek, which is very fascinating. So, panelists, why don't you talk to us a little bit about what you're currently working on and what led you to be interested in the Metaverse and virtual reality?
Oh, okay, yeah. So we just wrapped up at Wemo Lab a launch app for the Gear VR. It's called Blue VR. It kind of transports you into a virtual environment. It's been built for people of all ages and technical proficiency to check out. I have a dead unit with me, so just bug me if you want to check it out. And we're building a platform to really empower creatives around the world to more easily create distributed playback VR experiences, whether that's video or CG or things like that. The Metaverse really came to me probably 96, 97 when I started making websites, playing online with a bunch of people, and read Neuromancer, and the rest is history.
I'm Joudrey. Testing. Cool. My exposure to the Metaverse is through my application VR Chat. We are a social platform for VR, and like a lot of us up here, we are also doing the user-generated content things, because it's important with the Metaverse that everybody gets to have the VR Metaverse that they want. Like, that's one of the most important parts of it. So the way I got into that was through the social dynamics of VR chat and online multiplayer in particular. When you see another avatar and it's clear to you that they are moving their head, what they're paying attention to is what they're looking at, and they speak, your brain just clicks, and suddenly the place is real, the person is real, and that is one of the most important things for the Metaverse, and that's how I got it.
Hi, I'm Mary Spio. I'm with Seek, Creative Seek, which is a virtual world for accessing VR content. We consider it like a gateway to the virtual web. And I got to it because I'm a huge 3D fully immersive fan. And having worked with online video delivery, I figured once I tried the immersive scene, I realized this would be the best way for us to be able to deliver content. So that's how I got to it. And I have a So the idea behind Seek would be to access the virtual world, and then through each single area that you get to be able to have different experiences. So this, for example, is just one of the aspects inside of Seek. You would come to the info center, be able to select content and have a different experience, whether it's a concert, an educational experience, and so on and so forth. And then, this would be like the movie theater. So having the ability to truly experience a VR home for brands and for different experiences. And like my colleagues here as well, we're also building tools to help content developers, and then most importantly for the user to have a unified experience, so they don't have to download a bunch of apps because it could be very intimidating. So we're providing tools for content creators and users to have the best experience possible.
Great, thank you. Those are good introductions, and we're all using this term Metaverse. At Avacon, we talked a lot about what the Metaverse means, because in working with lots of different folks in the industry, we find that there are many different answers to that question. I would like to conceptually think of the Metaverse as connected virtual worlds where my identity myself travels from place to place.
I mean, when I think about the metaverse, I kind of think about it in the context of what we want it to be, right? Like, it's hard to say that there's a metaverse out there now. I was going to talk about that a little bit, but what we want it to be is we want it to be a interconnected group of 3D virtual experiences at a high enough level of fidelity to really engender a serious feeling of presence and the ability to communicate, interact with people in as realistic ways as possible. And that to me is probably the most generic basis.
Would you guys agree? Is that sort of what you think of?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head with identity as well. Like, you've got to be identifiably you. You've got to travel from place to place. And the metaverse is a place where you can do anything that you can do in VR. So if you're communicating, if you're playing games, if you're playing cards, any of those things that you can do in VR, you should be able to do them in the metaverse with your identity and with other people.
And I think for us too, it's pretty much the same, being able to create these real-life experiences, but in this simulated world with the ultimate goal or the ideal being even being able to travel geographically or for it to be geographical accurate, all of that, but maintaining your identity, almost like holographic, version of yourself, but it's in that virtual environment.
Wait, would you say that applies? So what if I'm going from your world, which may be more cartoony, to your world, which may be more realistic? How does that identity and portability work between different kinds of worlds? What do you imagine that will be like in the future, even if we don't have the technology now?
I mean, I think it can be just that. I mean, to me, the design aspects of it are interesting to talk about, and you can kind of go on and on about that for a long time, but from a technical perspective, at least at a very foundational level, you need to have a common language that all of these different systems and worlds are speaking, right? And there's really only one example of that exists today, and that's the World Wide Web, right? So for the metaverse to exist from today, I have to think that it's going to be built on the backbone of the World Wide Web. That's not totally accurate. It could be something else. But if you look at all the other virtual worlds that have been built, it's part of the reason why there are these splinter types of experiences and communities. They can't communicate. They have other types of focus, etc., etc. So that to me is the first thing we need. I don't know where we are with the state of VRML.
So you're talking about standardization.
Yeah.
The language, as he said, you just need something that everybody can talk to, right? Yeah. It could be a web technology. It could just be a database somewhere.
Yeah, that's true.
But if everyone doesn't talk to it, whatever it is, then they can't really talk very well.
Yeah.
You'd have to custom make every link would require programming. The web wouldn't work if every link required programming.
Exactly.
Right. And I look at it the same way as almost like think of the virtual web. So in order for us to really realize this notion of the virtual web, we have to have standards, we have to be interoperable, and everybody has to, address the user as a whole so that they can move seamlessly throughout those worlds.
So then assuming that we reach that point where there is some common standards where you can travel from world to world with a common identity, what do you guys imagine then what are the business opportunities? What are the good use cases? I mean, I think we've all seen bad implementations of VR, right? If somebody's trying to do something with VR that it just doesn't translate well. What are the good use cases? What are the good business opportunities?
I think, for example, we're working on a few things that are great use cases. One is within education. We're currently working with a group that has digitized all the assets from both Kennedy Space Center and Johnson Space Center. So all these digital assets up until now have just been sitting there in the library. So we're creating this massive VR library that schools can now implement for people to visit these massive libraries. So I think that's one aspect. We're also working with professional sports teams that are looking to create their VR homes that their fans can, first access and then be able to even interact with their favorite athletes and so on and so forth. So So those are a couple of things that are, ways in which businesses or, outside of just entertainment can be spaces.
I think you
Go on.
I think you can basically make a business out of anything like location-based, right? So if like this hall, this is a location that exists in the real world. But if we didn't want to gather people from all over the country or all over North America to come here, there's a business there, right? You could just host a hall. Anything that has a place where people congregate is really well suited for VR. Education, as you mentioned, that is an awesome one. We've done something different for you in education. My lawyer teaches video game law. So a couple weeks ago, he did his class. He stood in front of the classroom with a Kinect camera pointed at him, and half his students were there, another half was in a room elsewhere in the University of British Columbia, in VR, attending the same lecture, where they had the slides on the screen behind him, and his voice and all of his body motions were translated onto his avatar in VR. And the students absorbed all the information. They all enjoyed it. They all learned what they needed to learn in the class. And so that's a different aspect of the education part of it, absolutely.
I mean, I really think that it's anything, right? I mean, if you talk about the metaverse, you're talking about a reality in which you can communicate with people at a level of fidelity, a level of presence that rivals what we feel in the real world. The basis of any type of business transaction is communication first. What this type of experience is empowering you is it's empowering you to have that communication regardless of geographic location, to have that type of experience of previewing a model home that is being built in Brazil and won't be done for 2 years, but you want to get in early, right? Previewing the travel itinerary for this travel agency that's working for you. I mean, literally, the business opportunities are kind of unlimited. I actually think the more interesting part of the metaverse is in how it can take us beyond the communication that we have now and beyond our own selves. I know we've been talking a lot about how the metaverse needs to represent you as you are in the real world in the metaverse, and I actually think that's selling it short to an incredible degree, because I think the most powerful thing the metaverse can give us is empathy. Empathy is one of the hardest things to really engender in people in a digital form. But with VR and with presence, when you open your eyes and you look in the mirror and you're someone of a completely different gender and a completely different race and a completely different socioeconomic place, that is a powerful experience. That is something that can change the world.
I would say that my intention wasn't to have my own identity, but an identity.
An identity. Yeah, totally. And I think your own identity is important too, right?
Being able to, right.
I definitely think presence, you said presence and empathy, and also the concept identity can be fluid. How I am at work is not necessarily how I am in my personal life, for example.
Right.
And I guess from my perspective, I want the metaverse to accommodate both a high level of realism, if that's what I'm trying to do. But I guess for me, the magic is the idea that for the first time, we will be able to dive into each other's imaginations. We'll be able to do things in the metaverse that we cannot do in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some aspect of replicating, a class, for example, which may be very practical. But I think for me, when I look 20 years in the future, what I hope to see is that we're able to dive into human imagination and creativity in ways that we've never been able to do before. Do you see other ways that you can imagine this sort of the metaverse transforming how we experience creativity or entertainment or what it means to play? I mean, in the metaverse, how would that be different than how we play in real life?
Right, I think definitely it encompasses all of that, having the ability to play, to also live, right, with all the practical applications, and then, ultimately even using it as a collaborative tool. But in terms of creativity, I think that it will really allow us to live inside of the content, which inside of our imagination, inside of other people's imagination, which is how I think a lot of us have come to VR and immersive content, is the whole magic of being able to take this flight of fantasy that otherwise, you can see it on a flat panel. When you're actually inside of it, it's a whole different notion. And we're going to see that with more movies that are being created this way, with just all types of content and different, representations of things that we haven't, even imagined yet.
Yeah, Jason Lanier had a very interesting way he talked about that dream, and that, I think he called it post-symbolic communication, right? So what he meant is that right now we communicate with each other through words and symbols and things like that, but in the metaverse and in VR, we actually have the ability to communicate through experiences, through creative expressions of ourselves that aren't necessarily limited to symbols and words, but are a series of experiences that people build. And that, I think, is what's truly mind-blowing. And the funniest way that I'm thinking about it is that, imagine Tinder today, right? Tinder, great little game to play, great way to meet people. But instead of flipping through cards that are basically Facebook profiles, you're flipping through people's chosen experiences, lives. And that's mind-blowing to think about, right?
Yeah, I think that some of the most creative things are going to come about when people let go of reality. Like right now, everyone's trying to emulate reality in virtual reality because it's what people understand and it'll be accessible to a wide audience and say, this is a classroom or a hall or whatever. But then let go of that in a few years and have people just floating around, right? Instead of chairs. Everyone runs the speed of the Flash, jumps like Superman. That stuff is going to come, absolutely.
I think you're right, but I'll have to tell you, I've been working in this space for 12 years now, and it's actually really hard to let go of reality. First of all, because somehow in 12 years I'm still working with a lot of newbies who need familiar handholds. I don't know about your guys' experience, but in my experience, someone who's never thought about or experienced VR before, it's frightening for some people. And so familiar touch holds, chairs for their avatar, things that help ground them in that environment. They want those kinds of things. So on one level, it's as a developer anyway, I don't know if you guys have the same experience, it's hard to develop beyond the newbie experience because there's still so many darn newbies that we want to have a good experience for their first time.
So we have one chat room that's a cafe, and we have another one that's a bunch of floating islands in the air. And in that one, we give the players the ability to jump 30 feet in the air, right? And so you can actually leap from island to island. And it gives me opportunities to put wagers when people fall and jump. But that type of thing is some users don't like it, but we have the cafe for them. So I don't think necessarily that everyone's going to move into these abstract spaces, but that they'll be there for the people who want them, the people who aren't newbies and don't need the grounding.
Right, and I think also for all the really exciting things to happen down the road, we have to be able to have that widespread adoption, right? So with a lot more people using it, a lot more people, and for a big part of people with the early adopters that are not used to, someone flying and doing all of this, we almost have to kind of handhold them with things that they're familiar with, such as creating these real experiences, whether as the ability to go to some kind of football match or whatever it is, to kind of get them inside, and then once they're in, they're going to want more and more, because that's what happens. Once you experience different things, then you want more and more of these experiences, so we can kind of slowly pull them into all these great, crazy hyper-cool platforms that we do.
Yeah, to me, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that we're all kind of getting to an even keel that you need a classic first user experience, right? Like what's your funnel? Where do you start at? It's a lot more complicated than apps and social development because now you're dealing with the 3D world and flexible controls and blah, 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 blah. What's interesting to me is as I think about the metaverse and I think about, the current incarnations of that, like MMOs, the actual closest analog to the future version of the metaverse, to me, is Facebook, right? Absolutely 100%. Facebook is platform agnostic. There is 1 billion people on it. Everybody has access to it. Everyone has an avatar on it. I know a lot of people, some of my best friends in my life, their posts on Facebook are not themselves. They are projections of themselves. It is like they're a slightly different person. That is very similar to how people, I think, are going to act in the metaverse. Now, this social adoption to this social space did not happen overnight, right? We had the platform, it came on, and just now, people are getting comfortable with it, right? So when the technology is there and we have that going to take people 5 to 6 years to get comfortable being in a 3D space, just like it's taken them 5 to 6 years to get comfortable being on Facebook.
Do you think Facebook, I boycott Facebook, so I don't know very much about Facebook myself. But do you think, my sense is that on Facebook, you had to sort of integrate your whole self. They didn't allow anonymous names or alternate handles, so you had to get used to your mom and your boss and your friends all being in the same space. Do you think that will happen in the Metaverse, or do you think that the embodied sort of the nature of being in virtual reality is different than being on a web page?
Well, it's actually, I think it's going to be very, so the way Facebook works is that you can actually friend people and then put them into groups and then essentially never see them, right? So like they can communicate to you, and so you might see that message, but all of their posts you just don't see, right? And whereas you see a torrent of other people coming through. So you translate that to the Metaverse, I think it'll be very similar in that you come online and you might have groups of people, and some of them might be muted, some of those might be friends, but you just never see them, and that type of scenario. So I think that it's going to be somewhat customizable within spaces that quote-unquote you control or own, but I mean, I guess that's a really good question, right? It begs a bigger question. Is there a shared, is the sense of a shared public space that no one owns an inherent aspect of the Metaverse? So like, right, because if there's a shared public space like the road, right, then you would be able to run into your mother and like not run away, right?
Well, one of the things that we're working on is the ability to sort of filter through who you see in the virtual environment. So if I want to see people who are within X miles of me, or only certain types of people, and even for myself, with our gentleman that we're working with, sometimes I would go on there right in the middle of the night and all of a sudden somebody pops up from you. So I think that having the controls to be able to, be as social as you want to be, or also be able to not, be seen in certain areas, and sorting and filtering who sees you. So a lot of those controls, we're looking at now, and hoping that within, a very short period of time, we'll be able to have that, so that you don't have to worry about, running into the type of people that are running into.
So if we're in your virtual world, you have a filter to not see me, but we're both in it, and we just don't see each other, so like ghosts.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think there's also an opportunity to have multiple accounts, basically. Not multiple accounts, you can have one account, multiple identities within that account. You kind of pick one when you log in. And then, so you've got one that you use for your socializing with friends and family and stuff like that. And so you've got your work persona. And yes, your work persona might bump into your mom on the street, but she wouldn't recognize you. So it wouldn't be like bumping into you.
So I think what I'm hearing is part of the business opportunity for this is there's going to be a whole other level of social filtering and analysis and analytics to help people have the experience that they want to have, when they want to have it, where they want to have it in this virtual space.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, that might be a very sad, right? Like, imagine whatever social service you use, taxing you to root people or favorite things, do anything, right? That'd be kind of a bummer. But yeah, sure, yeah, it's totally, whoever owns it, totally nickel and dime you. And again, it's part of my hope that this is kind of a web-based thing. No one owns the web. That's what it says that way. And ideally, no one would own the Metaverse per se.
We make an argument for open source.
Yeah, I mean, open source for sure. As much as the internet is open source right now and shares a common protocol. I would make a huge push for that.
So, in the interest of time, they sort of asked us to shorten it up. I wanted to ask a couple of sort of more philosophical questions. It seems to me like even though the technology still isn't quite here for us to experience the Metaverse that I think we all envision, this idea refuses to die. Someone was up earlier talking about they've been working in this space for now 20 years. Why do you think that is? Do you think that reflects something about our human nature?
Yeah, I think that, humans are communal by nature. So any way in which we could experience other humans as something that's never going to go away. And right now, trying to remove the geographical separation is something that, we aspire to do. So as humans, communal creatures, it's never going to go away until we can sit, next to somebody else and look them in the face and see their expressions and experience them in as close a way as we can in real life. It's not going to go away.
I think for me, the Metaverse idea doesn't die because when I was young, I wanted to be a fireman and I wanted to be an astronaut. And being an astronaut is hard, being a fireman is dangerous. Reality kind of came in, and I decided those weren't good ideas. But what if nobody ever told me that I couldn't be those things? The Metaverse can be that place where you can do all that stuff that just doesn't work in reality. And it's like living in your dreams, right? It can be what you want it to be, and nobody's really telling you, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, I agree with both those statements. I do think there's like a innate desire to communicate, an innate desire to be what you want to be regardless of whatever physical restrictions. But I actually think the Metaverse it's kind of interesting to think about it as why does the idea of the Metaverse not go away? Focusing specifically on the Metaverse as this like connected virtual space that's purely digital. It's not something that's a biological thing. It's not a drug you take. It's not, whatever, right? And what's interesting is you can kind of look back in the history of technological development of a wide variety of things used for entertainment. There was these ideas going around about the need to capture life in some way to play back to other people hundreds of years before cinema was produced. And Myron Kruger, I think is the name, so everyone should know, Myron Kruger is arguably one of the most important people in VR history. In the 60s and 70s, he was the first person to kind of look at VR and try and focus on its interactivity and its artistic capabilities. And in the 70s, he created this artistic installation in a museum that I can't remember right now, but in the 70s, a lot of people didn't have the experience of seeing themselves on TV or film or anything like that. And so what would happen is people would walk into this room and they sit down, and on the screen in front of them, or the wall in front of them, would just project themselves. And they would just sit there and just be like, oh, shit, what? And what he would do is he would bring in a mouse cursor onto the screen. And people just naturally dumped. He made the mouse cursor a ball, and people just naturally started playing ball, right? So what's the greater point here? The greater point here is that even people don't understand or have experience with certain levels of technology, there's some type of innate characteristics in us that keep driving towards these type of experiences. We're ready for them when they come, and on a subconscious level, we want them to happen.
So, for your own companies and what you're working on now, what are your next steps toward the Metaverse, and what advice would you give for folks in the audience who maybe haven't been thinking about how the Metaverse relates to their work now? What steps should they maybe follow? Do you have some advice for people who are new to the Metaverse idea?
Get people traveling between areas. I think that's a big part of it. Get people talking to each other. We've got the areas, we've got the talking, and we're working on getting them transported to where they want to go without popping back into the user interface.
We are working on getting as photorealistic as possible in terms of environments, in terms of delivery of the content, and then in terms of even the avatars that are within the environments. And then also, having the ability to enable other content creators to build into our world, and working with everyone to create this protocols whereby we can all continue to interconnect. And I think there are a lot of opportunities there to be able to plug into developing additional worlds inside of some of the other worlds that are going on.
I'm going to be a little contrarian here. I think that's really good advice. I think that right now we're so far off from the Metaverse. I'm actually much more interested in seeing people work on stylized experiences that connect people in a meaningful capacity, one-on-one or in small groups. There's a couple reasons for this. Stylization is important because VR is freaking hard. It is super hard to build, it is super hard to play back at frame, it is super hard to do that in a connected state. Making something realistic is overcomplicating your work at this level of technology. Second, right now, building these huge worlds is very difficult. It takes a lot of people, and I think small teams can effectively build very meaningful experiences that really can start really small. One of the most important things for the growth of people, humans in general, in terms of building relationships, is looking at people in the eye, right? Just give me one moment. I don't care if I'm a stylized rabbit, right? Give me one moment in a world that's holistically, consistent, right? If it's totally cel-shaded, but everything's cel-shaded and all looks great, I can still be very immersed. Give me one moment where my eyes are tracked and I can see someone else and they're tracked. I think that's mind-blowing. That's something we can do right now in the next couple of years. And that's really moving the ball forward towards the Metaverse, because the Metaverse is going to be founded on those types of communications at the most base level. Think about Journey, right? Get a moment like Journey.
Right, and just to add a little bit to that, and you have to start somewhere, right? And those are the type of experiences that we're building. And that's why we put together the type of teams. So I don't think it's as far off, and we still have to start somewhere with, so for example, with our world, we're not building the entire world. We've developed certain areas so users can have those experiences. We've developed the ability for users to communicate with each other. The avatars are currently not as photorealistic as we'd like to get them, but we can't wait till the time is, we can't wait 5 years from now to make them photorealistic. So we're starting off with the premise that, hey, this is our starting point, and then we'll continually improve it and have it to where it could get to be, holographic. So I just think starting now and then working towards, that utopia.
I think that's actually kind of right. The Metaverse to me is a word that either describes the goal or the process. And it's like realistic graphics. When do we have realistic graphics? Well, the answer is every time something new gets released, right? It's like, oh, now we've got the Xbox, it's got realistic graphics. Now we got the Xbox One, it's got realistic graphics. So the Metaverse is the same thing. It's like, and by that definition, we either have the Metaverse now or we'll never get there. So it's just the Metaverse of today, and it's limited in all the ways that he said, but that's just what the Metaverse is.
It's where we are today, and I'm sure it will continue to evolve, and I'm seeing the organizers in the interest of time. Thank you so much to our panelists.